Purple Political Talk here, and today we're going to be going through the 2020 United States Senate elections, and we're going to identify the races that are going to be a little closer than others, and the races that actually have gotten further to one side or the other. So let's just start by filling our safe states. This election will be interesting because usually some of these states that are usually not that safe, they they go to the safe column because Senate races are a lot different than presidential races, than governor's races. And honestly, it depends on who you run as a candidate and how much money they have to put into their campaign and how much money they get from donors. Just before I just begin, one of the most interesting cases, I guess, Massachusetts, honestly, they're having a Senate race that's contested, but not in the way that you may think. You have the Congressman Joe Kennedy, the third descendant of the famous Kennedy family from Massachusetts, and going against incumbent Ed Markey. They're looking to see who will win that race, so they just go and become the next senator. So at this point, Massachusetts is an interesting case, but it's because of the primary rather than the actual general election. New Mexico, at this point, Ben Ray Lujan, the congressman, he has a very good chance of winning there. I don't think there's no question. That'll probably be by 15 points at most. I think minimum will go like by 10 points. So, other than that, I think those are all our safe Democratic states. Looking where Republicans get their votes, they're going to have to do a very good job this time around to have a big majority in the United States Senate. And honestly, if they're not careful, they could lose big parts of the majority. And that could really hurt them. And you see, they are at a disadvantage. Most of the seats that are currently not filled in are Republican seats. And the seats that are held by Democrats, it's very likely they will go back and win re-election, except one big case, which, let's just start with a Republican likely states. The state of Alabama. Look, Doug Jones, he's pretty popular, I guess, in Alabama for a Democrat, but he's a Democrat. Tommy Tuberville, or if it's Jeff Sessions, they're going to come in and just take the state by storm. And honestly, Jeff Sessions was an old senator. Tommy Tuberville is very popular in the state. And I honestly think that there's a nice shot for Republicans to win right there, and that would probably help them cancel out some of the losses they've had. Where else do they get a likely state? In my opinion, Georgia is a place where they get a likely state. The reason being, okay, this is not going to be a 2018 Texas Senate race scenario. We're talking about a Senate race where there is a pretty unpopular incumbent because John Cornyn, Ted Cruz was pretty unpopular, but John Cornyn is more unpopular a little bit more. But still, the candidate that's running against him, which I think at this point it's MJ Hegar, she's not a Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke was an extraordinary candidate that knew how to campaign and how to run a successful statewide campaign. At this point, I think it's going to go by like 5 to 6 points. Still, comfortable win for the GOP. Another state, I think, at this point, look, Kentucky. Mitch McConnell's not one senator that's always had these good, easy races, because in reality, if you look back at his election history that goes back to the 80s, he's had very, very close elections every single time. And you've seen that. 2014 was an example. We saw a very close Senate race with the Kentucky Secretary of State, which is a Democrat, against Mitch McConnell. We have Amy McGrath. She ran a campaign in Congress, but she lost. She's like one of those people, let's say like Stacey Abrams or Beto O'Rourke. They became famous statewide or nationwide after they lost the race. So what's your qualification? I lost the Senate race. Amy McGrath has more qualifications than that. But still, the voters are going to see it that way. And I think at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell stays. That's his kind of political throne, and he's probably not going to lose it. The state to our left, I think, could get a little closer, but actually, the state of Georgia's special Senate election, I honestly see the Republican Party taking that seat. And you know why? They're running good candidates, whether it be Kelly Loeffler or Doug Collins. They're going to have a good candidate in that race. And Democrats don't have anyone super prominent. somehow they ran John Ossoff for the statewide, so like the regular Senate race, which I think was a huge mistake. But anyways, that's going to make the race a lot closer in that statewide race. But at this point, I can say Georgia special is likely. Now, where do Democrats come and take over seats, and where do they start with taking seats and just win more seats? I think at this point, the state of Colorado, it's looking pretty good for them. John Hickenlooper against Cory Gardner, who's a very popular incumbent. He's probably losing his seat, and honestly, John Hickenlooper will probably win by 5 to 10 points. At this point, I also think the state of New Hampshire is going to go by 5 to 10 points. Jean Shaheen, very popular, and people do like her in the state of New Hampshire. And honestly, it's a thing of looking what candidates are good and what candidates are bad. Who knows how to run a campaign, especially in these scenarios. And honestly, I think one big reasons why Republicans might lose the Senate is because they ran atrocious candidates. Like, the candidates they picked in some of these places are atrocious, and they're just giving away seats at this point. So, I think at this point, I can also say the state of Michigan will also go to Gary Peters by a comfortable margin, probably like 5 points. Remember, John James went against Debbie Stabenow. He did everything, but he lost the Senate race. He's like candidates like Beto O'Rourke or Stacey Abrams. What is he known for? You lost the Senate race. And honestly, Republicans, they don't have a chance of winning any statewide race in Michigan anytime soon. After the governorships that have been happening since after because the governorship that happened right before Gretchen Whitmer, that governorship was very unpopular, and it was in Michigan, and it was a Republican. So at this point in time, I think Gary Peters is a nice hold on seat. Minnesota, I don't think the people of Minnesota want to change. The reason being, you see how they've been going through all these tough times. They pretty much destroyed Minneapolis, which was like the metropolis of Minnesota. And I think many Minnesotans, they would want to stay with the same leaders. So Tina Smith, she wouldn't have one real big contender to go against her. But still, it would be a nice, comfortable margin. So now we're going into our lean and light and tilt states. So what are our lean Republican seats? At this point, there aren't many. I think if there were one, it would be the state of Iowa. And there's a couple ones. So the state of Iowa and the state of Georgia. In the state of Iowa, I think Joni Ernst, pretty unpopular, I guess. She's going to have to run a heck of a campaign. But here's the thing. Democrats haven't ran someone super duper prominent. They needed to run someone prominent. Because look, these races are about name recognition and fundraising abilities. The more name recognition you have, the more money you can raise. And honestly, it's why a lot of these Republicans might be losing in some of these races. I think Joni Ernst will hold on narrowly, but still, narrowly, it's not a good thing for your political career. As further down the road, you start seeing and you get a little bit, you destabilize a little bit and you fall off the iceberg. State of Georgia. This race at this point, it's David Perdue against John Ossoff. I think it's going to get pretty close. I think it goes down to 3 to 5 points. And at the end of the day, John Ossoff is not going to be able to. I mean, I understand there's going to be high levels of turnout and everything, but I don't think he's the candidate to do that, certainly speaking. So, and I also think that, honestly, Republicans either, one, they just give away the seats they are going to lose and focus on saving some of their other seats, or at this point, try to go offensive. But there's no point at going and gaining seats because it's pretty unlikely. So I think best strategy for Republicans, hold on to your seats and win Alabama. And you would, which is unlikely because you have states like Colorado or Arizona where you have very unpopular incumbents. So who knows? So now looking at our Democratic lean states, we have states like Arizona. Mark Kelly is going on to be a very good candidate for Democrats in the state of Arizona. And Martha McSally has been unpopular since she lost the Senate race. And I mean, I don't think personally that Doug Ducey should have nominated Martha McSally and just given her that Senate seat. I mean, yeah, it was like an effort to unite the state of Arizona, but at this point, that's a pretty bad idea for Martha McSally's political career. So I think Mark Kelly will win by 5 to 7, from 3 to 5 points actually. It's going to narrow up a little bit, but look, Democrats are going to win in the state of Arizona, but I don't think that he's gonna win by 15 points or something like that. I think it's gonna be like around 3 to 5 points. I could believe you if you told me up to like 7 points. Other than that, I would say maybe a little lower. So, where else do Democrats have these seats? Look, Suzanne Collins is not looking this good. The state of Maine is looking heavily that's going to go to Sarah Gideon, the candidate for the Democratic Party. She is kind of popular in the state, Sarah Gideon, while Suzanne Collins is super, super unpopular. So, at this point, there's no contest. Like, there's no contest. I mean, maybe if, like, Suzanne Collins can pull off a miracle or something, but it's looking pretty unlikely for her. Which, I mean, it's kind of all up to her. You have to manage your approval ratings when you're in the Senate, and even more if you're in the House of Representatives. But Susan Collins did an atrocious job at this right after Donald Trump became president. Because if you guys remember, when it was the Obama administration, she was very bipartisan. But I guess, I don't know if it's the pressure and things like that from the Trump administration. But Susan Collins has lost a lot of her bipartisanship. Now, another state I think could go by lean margin to the Democrats is the state of North Carolina. Tom Tillis is going to fall off, unfortunately for the GOP in the state of North Carolina. And look, this state specifically has been a little bit of a cursed seat because it's always been flip flop every election year. There hasn't been one incumbent that has been reelected since this decade started and even before that. Because we had Elizabeth Dole. She got knocked off in 2006, I think. Yeah, 2006. No, never mind. 2008. Is that right? 2000. Yeah. So she got knocked off 2008, and we had Kay Hagan. Kay Hagan lost in 2014, and now we have Tom Tillis, which she's probably going to lose because Cal Cunningham is running a hell of a campaign. And honestly, I think Cal Cunningham could go on to win by a comfortable margin, and pretty good for the state of North Carolina and a Democrat. When it comes to the governor's race, there's no question. I mean, Roy Cooper's popular, I guess, and he's going to have an easier chance of winning that race. Last two states. Actually, I think my prediction in the state of Montana has changed. We're going into our tilt states. The state of Montana, I think at this point, it's looking like it's going to go to Steve Daines. Steve Bullock might be popular, whatever you want, but I think Steve Daines, he's the incumbent, and both of them are currently sort of statewide incumbents, so that kind of advantage is kind of out the window. What Steve Daines has that Steve Bullock doesn't is that the GOP is investing heavily into his campaign. You go on YouTube and you just start watching, I don't know, one of my predictions maybe, but I'm not monetized yet. But if you go watch another prediction, and there's a high chance that either like a Joe Biden ad will pop up or a Steve Daines ad. And it's like different GOP senators going and endorsing Steve Daines. Republicans are looking like this seat will be on the tip of the iceberg, and one wrong move could just move it to the other side. Steve Bullock could still do a good job here, but it's a matter of different things, like how much money do you have, fundraising, all these different things. Last but not least, we have the state of Kansas, and many of you might be saying, what are you thinking? But the state of Kansas, I think, at this point, it's looking, actually, I should have filled this in earlier. It's going to be in the lean margin for the Democratic Party. Chris Kobach will be the Republican nominee. Considering that Chris Kobach is going to be the Republican nominee, they already lost a seat. And this is another atrocious candidate choice I have been saying. Why are Republicans losing a lot of their seats? Atrocious candidate choices. Chris Kobach is really unpopular. He lost a governor's race in the state of Kansas. And we have someone like Barbara Bollier, who, I mean, she could resonate with the voters in Kansas. And honestly, I think that would have been an easier seat for the GOP to retain if they ran someone like Mike Pompeo, who's from the state of Kansas. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you agree with my prediction. If not, please go down to the comments and say what you think. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Down below is a link to the subscriber decided election night and the giveaway, pre-giveaway form. And yeah, so guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.